I'm wondering if the church is also going to change on the women's issue, and women will be getting the priesthood. I feel like that will be that, and the LGBTQ issue, I think, would be the issues of our day, where it's like, and we would have too. It's like the church, there's just more and more and more, where the church is fundamentally flipping on doctrine. Because for me, I feel like men holding the priesthood, I've heard it be said over and over and over that is a fundamental principle of the gospel, implying and that women should not. And I wonder if they could change it now and say, well, that just meant that men will have the priesthood, always have the priesthood, but doesn't mean women wouldn't. But no, I have heard it many, 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 many times that women wouldn't. And so if you give the women the priesthood, fine. You can change the doctrine, but call it a change. Don't tell me that this is how it's always been. I just didn't understand. That's fucking gaslighting. It's when you explain it as if that's the way it's always been. That's the damaging part, duh. So, like, yes, the church flipped its stance. That's obvious. It's obvious to anybody who's, like, thought about it and who knows any of the facts. Like, the church switched its stance. I don't know. I'm not going to say no matter how you explain it, because, yes, there is a way that they are now explaining it that, like, accommodates the new theory. And so it's just like, okay, but don't, like, the church can't be built on a house of lies. Like, the church can't be built on a foundation. Like, it's not going to work that way. It's just, so it's like, these are the immutable laws of God. These are God's laws, meaning it's just like the law of gravity. It's just the laws of consciousness. The laws are just there. Like, it's not about God just being like, well, I'm going to punish you now. It's like, well, if you do these things, bad stuff is going to happen in your life. Like, if you build your church on a house of gaslighting, the members are going to leave. Like, it won't work. People don't want to be treated that way. People are more than that. People have their agency and they want to use it. And we cannot fully use our agency if we're not able to consent fully. And if we're not giving all the information just as it is, informed consent. And that's why I think I still really like the church and why I'm still in it, because I feel like I was given informed consent. I feel like I knew about that stuff when I was getting into it. I already knew about. And I would work up at the church historic site, and it was like, the man lived in the house with all his kids, and like the woman, the first wife, lived out in a shack in the back, like in a little lean-to. And I was like, well, I mean, back then, I say that like, oh, she was out. She might have enjoyed that. That really might have been like what she wanted. I can see myself doing that and being 100% fine with it, even though on the outside it's like, oh my gosh, they live in the house and you live in the shack. But I mean, it's fine. It's a shelter. Like, who cares? But also, as you're just like away from everybody, like it might have been what she wanted. We don't know that. We can't make a judgment call, but we should be giving people the facts. That's an interesting fact. That's something you could talk. It would bring interest. People come to those things like wanting to know about polygamy too. Like, everyone's curious about how it used to be. What was polygamy like? Why are we so scared of just revealing? Heck yeah, we were polygamists and we were good at it. And we were like, I don't know. It was based on a good principle. The principle. And everyone, that has like a real cringy feel now because of the whole like Southern Utah thing, like with the uninformed consent again, the child bride thing. Ugh. Because you're not really, when I was 14, I really didn't know a lot about the world. Like, I feel like I'm just barely learning a lot about the world now at 40, like 14. I feel like I got into a lot of situations that I really didn't fully understand what I was doing. And so I think that's the condition of every 14-year-old, of every kid. And I think we've all just decided 18 is about the age when you can start to kind of understand what you're doing a little bit better. And that's just the line. And so we keep the under 18 crowd just untouchable. They are untouchable. They are to be left to each other, to their own devices within their little group. They're not to be coming out into the adult society. It's just not wise. It's not safe. It's not good for them. potentially, like, it could be damaged. Like, yes, there could be a case, like, so many times a 14-year-old's married a 28-year-old man and it worked out and she had like 25 kids and they had a really loving marriage and she loved it. There's also the case of what I have real lived experience knowing a real life someone who got married at 14 or 16 to an older person, maybe 18, but I think maybe an adult. And her parents were 100% excited about this because she was out of control kid. And they thought this will tone her down. And she said that it did. And she's happy with her life and wants that life and was grateful that she had that opportunity to have that life. So I think that you could judge and there could be a case, but still, I think that would be the extreme, like, exception to the rule. Mostly, I would say just like we have this law. This would just make everyone feel a lot more comfortable, you know? And so if you cross that line, it would be a pretty strict consequence because there's so much room for damage, so much room for problems when those lines are crossed. And so if you cross that by one day, you know, like, there should be extreme consequences. But then it's like, okay, but what about your boyfriend that you were with when you were 16 and 17 and then he turns 18, right? So, like, I mean, we need to be normal about it. Like, it can't be, I mean, that's the spirit of the law, right? It's a lot different than, like, someone in their 30s, right? Or 40s or 50s or whatever else. Like, it gets creepier, like, for some reason, in my mind, the older that age gap gets when it comes to the under 18 crowd. Although because I think it wouldn't be that weird. Like, there's big age gaps. Like, some people want that. Who cares? Like, that's none of anybody's business. They're adults, right? Who cares? They're consenting adults. They're having a good life. They're able to fully consent to that life. Okay. But the church, when they gaslight and they don't fully give all the information, then all those members have not fully consented. And as a kid, you're not given all the information. I mean, why aren't you? I feel like I talk to all my kids about polygamy. They all know about polygamy. That's like, I don't know. It would be weird not to talk about sometimes because we talk about church history sometimes. It makes sense. And, like, it made sense for you to do at some point as a church. It made sense for you to do. So, why not just gotta own it. Jeez. Anyway, and the racism, I feel like that also made sense for you to do. And the scriptures still say that. And are we going to apologize for what our scriptures say and change it? Or are we going to keep it because maybe it has some kind of, like, deeper meaning? Because a lot of things are written within cultural context. And so if you just go around changing everything to fit your new cultural contents, you kind of, like, you're not going to get the original meaning. Like, you might think you know the meaning. Oh, I read this scripture and based on my current understanding of life, this is what it really means in our language. It's like, that's what it means to you. The scriptures have a lot more meanings than that, a lot deeper, and it can go deeper. And if you do that too much, where you're like, I'm just going to change things and tell you what it really means, you could mess up, like, whole generations of stuff. Like, it's going to get tainted, it's going to get watered down. So, like, a lot of times, a lot of us just want to stick with the old ways, the tried and true methods, and, like, think in that way. And it was, like, working, but maybe there's room for change too. But let's just admit it when there is change. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just call it change, that we changed.